now we're going to go into the challenges. And there were many hurdles, and I'm assuming we're gonna talk about this so you can be ahead of the game and you can be set up properly so you do not have these issues. I'm sure there are other issues that could come about when you're selling a business, but this made our timeline much longer. It went from wanting to sell in January and February.
With a buyer that was ready to buy.
With a buyer that was ready to buy and in place, and a buyer that stuck in there and stayed the course and never gave up, thankfully, right? Because most buyers would not have probably done this. But it moved it from January, February, all the way to what we thought was going to be the end of May, then June.
Mid-July.
And then mid-July, finally. So it extended it out. So let's start off with the challenge of the landlord issue.
Yeah, which was honestly the biggest challenge that we had to face. So this was like the end of October, right, of 2022 when we decided to list the business. It was like almost the end of October. We had just renewed the lease for 3 years. For another 3 years with the first option to renew, which I learned from the past is very important to have that clause in any of your contracts that you sign. That means when your renewal comes up, you have the first right to say, hey, I do want to renew or I don't, not the landlord. So that's why I got kicked out of my first storefront was I didn't have that clause in. And so I had signed the lease to renew back in the end of August, right? Thinking everything's fine. So I was out to lunch with Kirsten because she had just was leaving and we did like a final lunch together. Yeah. And I check my messages after I leave and I have a message from the real estate agent of where we were renting from. And she goes, Raya, it's an emergency. I need you to call me back. And I was thinking, okay, am I getting kicked out again? And yep, basically she goes, the landlord never signed the renewal. You signed, but he didn't. And I just want to give you a heads up that he is sending this is a Thursday, by the way. He's sending a certified letter on Friday. It's going to get to you on Monday, which was October 31st. I remember because this is Halloween. It's going to get to you on Monday, and on Monday, you'll have to be out of the business. Yeah. First of all, not only did we just list the business for sale, but now I'm thinking, holy Jesus, we're about to lose everything in a couple days. Our team, and this also, let me backtrack. It was very important to us to find a buyer that wouldn't fire the team, right? We wanted to keep everyone's jobs. And so that was very important to us. So when I heard that, we might be kicked out by Monday, I'm thinking, not even in terms of just us, but we have 10 people on our team at the time. What are they supposed to do? And so for the previous 9 years, we had an incredible landlord, no problems, but he ended up selling the building and he sold it to the town billionaire. And the town billionaire isn't going to be like the billionaires we're going to be. We're going to be nice, good billionaires, but he's just he's a businessman, right?
But let's go back.
He has no emotion to it.
Aside from that, there's a learning lesson in this, right?
Right.
In the contract.
Yeah.
Okay. In the contract, it states that the renewal, you have to send written notice that you're going to renew
6 months.
6 months before the end of the contract, right?
Which I had no idea because I never had to do that previously.
Right. So
in the same renewal.
The previous owners, they didn't go by that. It was just a phone call. Hey, you're gonna stay? Okay, yeah, you're gonna stay. All right, cool. We'll send over another contract, etc.
Yeah.
This guy, and I'm sure typically he may operate that way, but he had a vision. He owned this location, the business that we're referring to, is in a strip, right? So there's probably a row of 7 businesses And so he had a vision in his mind of
kicking every business
out because he was buying up real estate all along that street, and he had a vision for it. He's playing Monopoly, so to speak, right? So he was buying up different things on the street. And so I just want to make sure we stay factual with it. So there was a misstep.
Yeah.
There was a misstep. So it was not sent in, but there was a phone call. Okay.
By the property manager.
There was a phone call, and it was like, yeah, you're going to stay, right? And so, what happened was after that, the expiration date to renew happened, there was written emails and there was a phone call from the property management company who was actually calling in and saying, hey, are you going to do it? Okay, well, yeah, I'll just get the paperwork over to you and you'll sign it. This is all after the fact. Now, the property management company is acting on behalf of the landlord, right? So we were fortunate enough to get the situation worked out, had to get an attorney.
Well, let's talk about that, though. So, because it is not easy to go up against a billionaire. Like, because one, this man is very well known in Tampa. We called 3 different lawyers, including my own lawyer, who is great. He's amazing, but he's part of this guy's country club, and he didn't want to get kicked out, right?
Yeah. Let me talk about the phone call. So we're on the phone call with him, and he's talking, and he's saying, what's the situation? And we're telling him the situation. And then as I'm listening to him, the whole time he's talking, he says, well, you guys are going to have to get an attorney who's going to have to write something up that says this. And
we're like, you're our attorney.
And I stopped him. I said, I'm not going to say his name, but I said, hey, man, you keep saying you guys are going to have to get an attorney. This is why we called you.
You're our attorney.
We need you to do this. And he said, oh, man, I'm going to have to talk to my wife about this. And we were like, what do you mean? He said, we're members of the country club and, that he owns, that this guy owns. And, my wife loves to go have dinner over there. And this is a sensitive situation.
Yeah.
And, it was pretty funny. And we talked to
3 lawyers.
We talked to another one who same situation.
Well, no, she wasn't part of the club, but she said
it's gonna be tough.
She said it's gonna be so hard because he could play so many games with you, it would literally bankrupt you. Like he could play games in court. Yeah. He could play games that would just rack up your attorney fees so much that is it worth it? But to me, it was worth it.
That's what I was about to say.
To me, it was like him stealing 7 figures from us. It was like he was stealing my family's future.
Not just from that standpoint. It was worth it also because the alternative was we could have just tucked our tails and said, you know what, all right.
Call it a loss.
We were
over it.
And shut down the business.
Yeah.
We know we would have been fine because we have an online business. We already had a backup plan. We already had something else that was running smooth. But the employees would have been out of jobs.
Yeah.
Right? And it would have been so heartbreaking for them that just wasn't an option. So we had to find an attorney who was going to figure out a way for us to be able to stay.
Yeah. So we found one that was like, he was like, this mother effer.
We found one, luckily, that did not like the guy.
He doesn't like
wasn't
him.
A part of the country club and wanted to go up against him.
So it cost us $10,000 to send a certified letter back. Basically, what is it called where they like file a motion to like
it was
a
supposed
judgment?
To be like an injunction.
Oh, okay. So basically, we filed a lawsuit against the landlord, and it cost us $10,000.
It wasn't a lawsuit. It was not.
Okay.
It was not a lawsuit.
It wasn't.
The attorney sent a written notice, but before he actually sent them something to the court, he sent a written notice to the landlord's attorney. I think it was an injunction, right? Something that he was gonna file with the court if they proceeded forward with shutting down the business. So he sent a letter over to them. Luckily, he got a response back, and they began to negotiate. With that being said, the negotiation ended up being...
they honored the 3 more years.
They honored the 3 years, but did not give the first right to renew.
Yep. So with that, this is what really complicated the whole sale of the business. Anytime a buyer is going through the SBA or the bank, because they're giving them a 10-year loan, they are asking for a 10-year lease in a brick and mortar location to show that you're going to be there for 10 years, right? To pay this loan back. And so, I mean, we begged and pleaded to negotiate with the landlord, even for just like on paper to say that, you know, we'd have the 10 years, but he didn't really have to, because the buyers were okay with moving. I mean, they were honestly amazing. The fact that they stuck in as long as they did, they jumped through hoops to buy this business because they actually had to end up finding a whole brand new location, sign for that location. So now they have 2 locations at the same time. One's being built out, and they're, you know, once that's done, they'll move into that. But that's what ended up, you know, making this from a January, February sale all the way to July, is that they actually had to find a new location to get that 10 years. And it was actually a buyer that moved from out of state. So she really did jump through hoops to buy it.
She did.
Yeah.
She stuck in there, and he did too, her partner. They stuck in there, and luckily they both understood business enough, and they understood that if they could get past these things, that things will work out in their favor. Mm-hmm. So we were very, very, very lucky and blessed to have found them as buyers. On the challenge standpoint, one of the other challenges that we faced was, because it drug out so long in the industry that we were in, it affected the business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it affected the business because
we were just trying to maintain.
It's also, so we were trying to maintain, but also it was a situation where we had packages in the business, right? We offered packages, and the agreement was that because we were trying to be fair to the buyer, mm-hmm. they would have to honor any packages. Well, if they had to honor any package,
we weren't trying to like sell a bunch of packages before we sell, because, you know, it's like we don't want to pay that back. If it was because, you know, we sold it, and then we didn't want them to have to honor something that they're not getting paid for.
So because we stopped selling packages, really, like, we were hoping January, February, and then each month that went on, it was like the next month. Yeah. They were saying it's going to be the next month or the next month or the next month. So it slowed down a
little bit.
It slowed down the month.
We still maintained pretty well though. For not running ads or not doing much. I mean, we were maintaining 100K months. Yeah. You know, without, you know, doing much to grow, which was pretty amazing for us, like that, you know, 7-month time frame.
Yeah, but it definitely affected it.
But then our numbers look a little different.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, now the SBA asked us to resubmit paperwork because it had been so long, and now we have all of 2022.
Exactly.
And so it did affect it a little bit. You're right.
So SBA asked to submit in December. Then as it stretched on, they may have said resubmit in March, and then we thought it was going to be March, and they said resubmit in May.
It was a lot.
Then it got to May. So every time it was a resubmission, they would see a decline, but the decline was because, and they understood, mm-hmm. we had slowed down ads, we had slowed down selling packages, we had slowed down so many things that it affected the numbers.
And then we also lost a couple employees during that time. One just never came back from maternity leave. And then the second one decided to move out of state. And so at the same time, we didn't want to we weren't looking to rehire because we thought at any day this could sell, right? Like it kept getting pushed back, but we kept getting dates that were like, why would we hire? We don't know if what she, you know, her plan is and what she wants to do. So why hire and train a new microblading artist when that could take months in itself? And so that was definitely, part of the challenge.
Yeah. So if you're listening, you may be wondering, well, if an employee leaves, well, can't you just rehire someone else? It affects the numbers because each service was responsible for X amount of dollars, right? And so when an employee decides not to come back, then we have to tell the SBA, well, this is why this service is down this month or on forward because this person didn't come back, right? Yeah. And we didn't rehire we didn't fill the position because, once again, every month we're thinking the next month is supposed to sell.
Or in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, or the next two. That's it. It kept going on and on and on.
It was crazy.
And so we were trying to do what was best for the buyer by not putting someone in that room and giving them the chance to buy a business with open rooms where they can
have their own vision.
Yeah, they got their own vision. So it was a process, right? It was a really big process. And now we will go into the benefits and how it changed our lives going forward and how selling a business can actually change your lives too. So I'll let you start that.
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit is it is a change of identity to me. And maybe that's not the biggest benefit, but the biggest change to me is it's a change in identity of letting go of the good to go after something greater. And with that, it feels like growth. It feels like I'm ready to grow. I'm ready for the next level. I'm ready for the next thing. We're ready together for the next thing. And it's kind of like the closing of a chapter. And, that had a lot of lessons, a lot of amazing, that was an incredible 10 years. And to even make it 10 years, most businesses don't. And so the biggest benefit is like freeing up of time, energy, mostly like for me, mental energy, right? Like, because I didn't necessarily physically have to be there at the end, but it was the mental energy and like this person's leaving or this person has this problem or, there's a team and people is always going to be the hardest part of business, but also the most beneficial part of business. But for where we're at trying to grow another business, it was becoming a distraction. And so to be able to go all in on our online business and, make things better for our students and our graduates and like start building this out to be, more of it is a real business, right? And this is why I don't want anyone to get offended when I say real business, because like we have a 7-figure business and I still say real business because I think it's like once you grow your team out, now it's like truly functional business. And so that's what we've started doing. And we have more time to do a podcast and YouTube and investments and just things that we're excited about.
Yeah, I'll tell you from my perspective, from having to actually go in and deal with the issues, having to deal with more on the hiring side the last year, going in, having to meet with employees who were not performing or doing their job correctly, fire. I believe in the past year I had to fire at least two people, and then another person that actually started their own business. So we had to replace them. So it wasn't a fire, but it was so freeing mentally and freeing even from a spiritual standpoint, because when you have to deal with so many different personalities, so many different people's energy, it can become overwhelming at times. And especially when you have one business where you don't have to do that, and then another business where you do, and the other one where you don't, it just feels a lot better, right? And so in selling the brick and mortar business, it's been it's like a new lease on life almost. I'm being serious. I never acted this way or said this before, but just because it just did what had to be done. But yeah, it's been great not having to deal, because there's always going to be something, no matter what business you're in. Anytime you have people, 8, 9 people, I'm sure even when you have, I'm sure the less amount of people, the less issues, right? But anytime you have that many personalities, and that many people who ultimately have the desire to be valued and want attention and all these different things, which we all want, but it just creates issues sometimes. And so fast forward now, we have, like she said, we're building this business out. We have the time to, but we don't have to rush it because our profit margins are where they need to be. Our vision is clear cut. We know what we want to do with our vision, but we don't have to rush and add so many people. I think that's one benefit, since we know the issues that comes with having a bunch of people. We're doing more contractors now than before, and it's going to grow at the pace that we want it to, and not at the pace where it's unmanageable or where it feels too stressful. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then benefits from the actual sale, I would say one of them are big, like investment wise. We talked about this, but we invested in an app that we think, Chris Harder will take to sell for $1 billion one day, whether, we get to that point or not in the investment. But we definitely believe in it. And so for us, we're looking to invest in businesses that are building to sell, just like we want to, build a business to sell. That won't be Bosses in Beauty. It'll be another business that we're starting. But it's been a nice cushion, and now we're in London celebrating my birthday and the sale of the business. And we finally, we had a lot of work to do after the sale, but we're finally taking some time to recharge.
Yep. And it's also nice to have the cushion so we're not stressing. We have enough money in the bank account for the mortgage for the next X amount of years. We have money for investments. We have money for travel, right? So it's been very, very, very beneficial from that standpoint. Do you want to go into, I know we didn't plan on talking about this, but in this scenario, they didn't require the owner to stay on for X amount of time, 6 months or a year or 3 years. Sometimes buyers can negotiate that in, that the owner has to stay on and they get paid a salary. Mm-hmm. In this situation, they didn't, but do touch on post-sale, how things were structured.
So, I thought the transition was fairly easy. I was willing to train as much as possibly needed, but training was quick. We met and sat down and went over things on a Sunday, right?
Yeah, it was
we met with the team on Tuesday, and they really just took over. And most of the transition was just all the accounts and ordering and all the things that needed to be transferred, the auto pays that needed to be transferred in the new owner's name. That took the most time. But from a training standpoint, it didn't take a ton of time. It was maybe in total a 2-week transfer period of everything. But that's not always the case. And I think part of that was, her partner is a businessman and very entrepreneurial, and they have their own vision together. And so they were just kind of wanting to get in there and do their own thing. But like I said, that's not always the case. I think a lot of times they want the previous owner to either stay on longer or do way more in-depth training. But I really think it was a buyer situation.
Yeah. One bit of advice, in terms of, I'm sure some people are well, how do you tell your team? When do you tell your team? Obviously, you tell them after the deal is done. And from what we learned, it's probably best to have one team meeting, bring in the new buyers at the same time, and let them, you tell them what's happening, you introduce them to the new buyer, and then let the new buyer take over from there and let the transition take place all at once versus having 2 separate meetings. Yeah. So everyone can get that emotion out, because it's an emotional thing, right? And I don't want to gloss over that or act like it's not. It's an emotional thing for the employees because they
had no idea.
They had no idea, and also they were hired by someone. Some of them were hired did the hiring process with me. So it was a situation where it was very, very, very emotional because now they're having to work for people that they have never met, number one. Number two, they didn't agree to work for them, per se, right?
But it's everyone's choice.
Yes, it is.
You can't sell the people. You can only sell the business. So
correct.
We did our job of finding buyers that were not going to fire everyone right away, right? They were going to say, hey, we're not going to fire people. We're going to see how it goes. It's their choice if they want to stay, and their choice if they want to have good attitudes going forward. Which was
very good, because had these buyers said, you know what, we're actually going to have a clean slate as soon as we get in within the first 2 weeks, we're getting rid of everybody, we probably would not have gone with them, because that's not what We weren't trying to put people out of jobs.
Yeah.
Now, from an employee standpoint, if there are any future entrepreneurs listening to this, if you're a current employee and you're in a situation where your owner could sell the business, think about it from this perspective. They're only doing what they feel is best for their lives, right? You don't know what stresses they may have that the business could be causing them. It could be causing them health issues. So when they sell the business, be happy for them, especially if you want to be an entrepreneur one day. Be happy for them because you could be in that same position one day. It's a very good feeling to be in the position to be able to sell your business, right? So as an employee, although it could be tough to see the owner of the business sell, you also have to understand their disposition and understand that if you want to be an entrepreneur one day, you got to have the right mindset in that moment.
Yeah, and respect the new owners.
Have respect for the new owners who aren't coming in to fire you. Yeah. Because sometimes we were lucky that they didn't want to do that. Now, some people like she said, it's a choice, right? You can either choose to stay or you can choose to go. But you have to be appreciative when people want to see you around. They want to pay you, right? These owners are actually paying you money. So I just want to make sure we touch on that part because it's very, 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 very important as an entrepreneur, or especially a future entrepreneur who could have a job right now, and you could be in this exact situation. You can't have it both ways. You can't be disgruntled about your owners selling a business, but then one day want to be an entrepreneur who sells a business. All right. So have the right mindset. If you're taking notes, make sure you write that down. Have the right mindset, and if you are the owner of the business, just make sure if you want to sell one day, do not, in my opinion, do not do it in two separate steps. Have one meeting where you let the team know what you're doing. You bring in the owners during that same meeting, introduce them, and let everyone get that emotion out, good, bad, or indifferent, right there on the spot. Anything else?
No, I think that was good.
All right. So that is it for this episode, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye.